This is Moon Mulligan, and this is Let's Find Out with Diego.
Are you curious about the unknown, the unexplainable? Do you find yourself intrigued by the mysterious and paranormal side of our world? Join us on an adventure into the world of inexplicable discoveries and investigations that may someday give us the final answer as to what may be behind the veil of reality. The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's time once again for Let's Find Out with Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia. It's another episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Thank you for taking this journey with me on this episode of Let's Find Out. As we journey through the enchanting city of Savannah, Georgia, our guests will guide you through a thrilling haunted tour, igniting a fire within believers and nudging skeptics towards a realm of endless possibilities. Delve into the memorable encounters with spirits, captivating stories, and a deep look into Savannah's rich history. Join us for a truly exhilarating experience where the boundaries between the supernatural and the natural blur in the most thrilling ways. All this plus more. Please welcome to Let's Find Out new friends to our show, Mike and Ty DeFore. They are Spirit Experience. My friends, welcome to Let's Find Out. I'm very excited to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, it's interesting because the reason I have you both on the show, I was talking to a friend of mine. He lives in Alabama. We started talking about historical sites in his area and tours and, you know, basic paranormal talk and cryptid talk. And he said, have you ever been to Savannah, Georgia? I have not. I have not been that far south in Georgia. And he says, no, you got to really look into Savannah because there's a lot there for you. There's a lot of subject you can cover. And funny enough, not long after that conversation, I got online on my socials, and the first thing that popped up was your guys' name right on there on the old formerly Twitter. And bam, here we are. And I'm very happy to have you on. So as with any story, there's a beginning. Were you into the paranormal first before you started the haunted tours?
Absolutely. In fact, I'll let Ty tell you about her very beginnings. Go ahead, because you start from childhood in this.
Oh, yes. So I've always had a connection to the spirit world. I was actually born quite prematurely. And so my parents were Catholic. And so I was baptized and given my last rites at birth. So they've always thought, grandparents have always believed that the veil between the living and the dead had always been quite thin for me. One of my first memories, about 4 years of age, going down for a nap in Arizona where I was being raised at a young age, and seeing shadow people come towards me, not one or two, but dozens of them in broad daylight. I always knew things that I shouldn't know. I recognized pictures, places I'd never been to before. I always kind of spooked out cousins and siblings. Nobody ever wanted to sleep with me when, we had to give up our beds for the adults. I was always the lonesome one on the couch because nobody wanted to hang out with me. And it just always progressed for me. I've always been able to sense spirits around me or around other people. But I mean, as far as what I call myself, I'm just a beacon. I'm drawn to them and they're drawn to me. So I've always been that way. And when I met Mike, some interesting things happened to us.
Absolutely. Well, some of my background is I am a former pastor. And before I met Ty, I knew there was paranormal activity and I knew possibly there were human spirits. But before I met her, I used to think that really paranormal activity came in the way of angelic or demonic nature. And I still hold to this day that anytime you see any kind of major activity, it's probably demonic in nature is what's going on there. But when I met my beautiful wife 5 years ago, I've learned through her that there's numerous human spirits around us all the time. to the point where I call her spooky, as a matter of fact, because spooky things just happen around here. We have activity all the time. But like she was stating, when we first got married, we had some very extreme activity, which I do think was demonic in nature. And this went on for a couple of years, the first couple of years of our marriage. And it was pretty extreme. It got really bad. I mean, you hear all the people talk about, the stages of demonic activity with the infestation and the oppression and the possession. I can say from firsthand experience that is how it actually works in real life. And so we went through this experience which I can state, since when this is being put out recorded, that we are going to be on a television program that's reached out to us. And by that time we should have the show recorded, and we're actually going to televise our story. So it's pretty major. It really was. Yes. And we'll leave it at that for now. But after that, we found that once we got rid of the bad activity, that things still happened, but nothing like it was. But we decided we'd go to work for one of these ghost tour companies here in Savannah. And we found we really enjoyed it. However, we started to find out that when we were conducting tours, that we were actually getting activity. We have people using various paranormal equipment. Mostly on tours, it's easier to put spirit rods in individuals' hands and let them use them. And we would get pretty interesting activity. Well, COVID hit, and so everything kind of died down. But after that, we started working for another tour company here in Savannah, and great people. We love them to death. We started working for them. The more we worked on what we do, the more activity we started to receive on our tours, to the point where it's almost, I'll tell you, we'd have skeptics actually come on our tour. And by the end of the tour, I couldn't say they're confirmed believers at the end of the tour, but they will admit that there may be something that they hadn't considered before.
It's interesting. They always say it's interesting.
So I always love that, is when, you take somebody that just did not believe in anything supernatural at all. And by the end of our tour, they're considering the possibility. I consider that a big win. And since we just knew that we could do this, together, I don't want to sound like other couples out there who claim that when they get together, things happen. If people know, they know, and I'll leave that alone. But things do seem to happen when we go on these tours. And the reason we left the company we were with is we just wanted to do our own thing. We really wanted to go out there, and we only offer one tour a night, and we limit the size of our tour groups, so we can really give people one-on-one experience and actually conduct mini investigations on our tours. Yeah. And we do that at every one of our stops. We conduct mini investigations. Now, I'd love to say that at these stops that, we get all great paranormal activity every time, but we are dealing with human spirits, right? And so human spirits are going to do what human spirits want to do. Sometimes we get great activity at some of the stops. Sometimes we get nothing at all. But we can't say so far on our tours. On every tour, at least in a couple of locations, we will get some pretty convincing activity. And, we don't sit here and try to say, oh, it's definitely ghosts. We just say that it's interesting. We just say it's very interesting. This, we ask for something to happen, and something that we can't see actually interacts with the objects we're asking them to interact with. Now, personally, we know what it is. Ty can sense these things. And, people ask me if I believe in the paranormal. And I say, I do not believe in the paranormal. I know the paranormal is real. And so it just took that belief system out of it. When you know something, you don't have to believe in it any longer, because it's just is.
And what I like about the way we structured our company is we want the intimacy with our clients. We want to hear about their life stories. We want it to be small so that they each have an opportunity to try and communicate with anything that's there. Whether that be a local spirit of Savannah, or whether that be a spirit that came with them. That's happened a couple of times, and I'm very proud and honored that those guests had those experiences with us. And I like the intimacy. To me, bigger crowds, it's a lot for me. It's a lot for the other side to deal with. And it is kind of like herding cats. And I'm a very shy, introverted person. So too many people makes me a little nervous.
And not only that, we also mentioned that, only offering one tour a night. When we work for other companies, we were found if we had another tour right after tour we're on, we're like rushing everybody through this whole experience. And we weren't able to actually spend the time that we needed at each location. We advertise a 2-hour tour, but we haven't done a 2-hour tour yet. They usually run about 2.5 hours. And depending on how the guests are feeling about it, we've even had some run up to 3 hours, just because we want people to have that interaction with us and the spirits of Savannah.
And I'm not going to knock any tour companies, and they do some use equipment, and that's great. And the ones we work for used equipment, and that's great. But it's really hard to give the clients or customers equipment and rush them through, because it's not. I mean, the spirits have to get comfortable with us, just like we as living people have to get comfortable with people we're around before we open up and talk to them and everything else. So us doing the tours the way that we do it, we're not time limited. It's not like, okay, you only got 5-10 minutes at this spot, 10 minutes at this spot, 10 minutes at this spot. We can go longer. If the customers are really enjoying the activity, or guests, sorry, I'm sorry. Guests are really enjoying the activity, then we're on their time. And that's what we like to tell them. We're really on their time. We're on their time and the spirit's time. My time doesn't exist.
That's true. As we were talking about on the pre-interview right before we started recording, where I talked about I've been to different kinds of tours, and they're all right, fine. I've been on tours where it's basically somebody dresses up in that period of time costume. They tell you, here's the history of this building, move on, here's what they saw. But same thing when I go to do tours of caverns. Everybody has this memorized script. And it's okay, it's a large group. Sometimes you said herding cats. One people goes this way, the other way. They're not really learning anything.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came upon your touring company online, and I saw that not only were you being a little more intimate with your guests, but you were also using equipment. Mm-hmm. So during that time that you evolved into doing your own touring company, and it's very smart to limit the amount of people and and have almost unlimited time to get to know them.
Mm-hmm.
When they start the tour and they see the equipment, how much time do you set aside to show them how this stuff works?
Well, at the start of the tour, we take the time, well, first what we do is we hand out spirit rods and some EMF readers and a laser grid. So the things we're giving them to put in their hands at the start of the tour is really very simple tools for them to use. An EMF reader, you just explain, we'll hold our phone next to it, show how it'll set it off, explain how spirits are energy, just kind of keep an eye on it. And if it's sitting on green and then starts moving for no apparent reason, it's something to pay attention to. Of course, a laser grid is just a little laser pointer that they can point at the locations we're at and see if we get any movement. And then we do take time to show them how to use the spirit rods. Some people catch on real quickly. Other people during the tour, because Ty is the one that tries to communicate with the spirits with the rods most of the time. So at the beginning, if I see they're having difficulties, I'll go over and I'll work with them to help them hold the rods properly. A lot of people won't grab the top or the bottom, or they'll have them down too low or too high. So during the course of the tour, I will work with our guests to help them to hold it in the proper manner. And then we bring out other things along the tour. We'll bring out like cat balls, spirit boxes. We got the flashlight, record EVPs, but those are sort of things. I'll bring them out and I'll set them up in the location that we're at. Like if there's some stairs, I'll put cat balls on the stairs and whatnot. We also have another thing we use. There was are you familiar with the overnight guys, the Haunted Homies overnight guys on YouTube?
No, but it sounds pretty awesome.
Well, they actually did. Their YouTube channel does paranormal investigations. But last Halloween, they actually had a thing they were doing for Feed America. They actually went to the Warrens Museum, and they did a live stream the whole time they were in the Warren Museum. This around last Halloween, excuse me. And while they were in there, they actually put 666 Raggedy Ann dolls in the Warren Museum with the real Annabelle doll. Of course, the real Annabelle doll is actually a Raggedy Ann doll, not what you see in the Conjuring movies. And so we did purchase one of those dolls that spent over 100 hours with the real Annabelle doll in the Warren Museum. And a couple of our locations, we do have some little 2 locations. We got both of them have little girls who'll come out and communicate with us. And I will pull the doll out and explain to people, like I did right now, where it came from. So these are the things we use. But most of the stuff the customers actually hold are very simple equipment. But just because it's simple equipment doesn't mean it's not very gets good results, because it really does. I mean, somebody's holding rods and they've been sitting there holding it and it's standing straight as can be. And the towel come up and ask, is so-and-so here? If so, will you cross the rods? And all of a sudden the rods just go, whoop, just make a big edge just right in front of them, right? And so it's very, I say, interesting a lot on the tours. And when I'm talking about paranormal, I'm not claiming that's exactly what happened, but it is very interesting that on demand, that these things are happening, like turn the flashlight on demand, make the EMFs go off on demand. And so personally, I know this is spirit interacting with us, but, I'm sure there's the scientific minded and the skeptic would say, oh, it's just per chance. But I don't think chance happens on command, just one after another. So, it makes it very convincing we are communicating with something else. And I do want to comment on something now. You were talking about the histories and all that. We do share all that. We share the history. We share the folklore. Being we've been doing it, our company's only been in business since last May, but we've been doing this for about 5 years. So we're good storytellers, and we know the history. We investigated and make sure we're telling the proper history. And we like to emphasize that part of the tour also, because you might have the skeptic that wants to come, but says, oh, I'm not really interested in these mini investigations, but our goal is to entertain everyone who comes on our tour. Yeah. We want to make sure everyone has a great time. And that is our main goal. We love having people have the interactions, but our overall goal is to make sure that every one of our guests has a great time, no matter what their belief system may be.
We really like to, when they say that they really got the Savannah hospitality with us. It's one of the things we love to hear is, yes, everybody comes here and they do, lots of people go on lots of different tours, not just ours. And they do historical, and they do the trolleys or the horse and buggy, and they do them all, and they're beautiful. But, some say they don't really get the hospitality. So we like to leave a memorable mark of them, not just for spirit experience, but for Savannah on them. We want them to leave and know, Savannah is a beautiful Southern hospitality city. Yes,
Savannah's known as the hosted city, and we would like to think that we're helping it maintain that name on our tours.
So with Savannah having such a history as it is already, what makes it so alive with paranormal activities? And during these tours, what locations are you visiting?
Okay. Well, Savannah, if you ever visit Savannah, you'll hear more than just the paranormal tours tell you Savannah's built on our dead. And we truly mean that. You're never really far from a corpse in the historic district of downtown Savannah. The 2 places we have a Monterey Square tour and a Wright Square tour. And both of those squares has a corpse in the middle of the square to start off. So you start off in the square. That actually one is both of them are marked graves that are there that people can see. There's actually people buried right there. And then through the course of the tour, the Wright Square we start off at, the original cemetery was right beside there. And, I'm sure you may be familiar with the original movie Poltergeist. What they did is move the tombstones, left the bodies there.
It was in the corner of the square as well.
Yes, all the way into the square. So there's a whole block that was the original cemetery in Savannah that they removed the tombstones but left the bodies underneath there. A lot of activities in those buildings over there. Also, a gentleman that runs some, which I recommend if you're in Savannah, the Old Factory. He runs it as he sells sage and a lot of paranormal kind of stuff that people would really dig. But he talks about all the paranormal activity he has in there every day, and his business actually built on top of that cemetery. Mm-hmm. Then once you go past the Old English cemetery is what that is. Right past there is a marker in the road that represents where the Jewish cemetery was. And again, the corpses are still buried right there. And this is just the beginning of one of our tours, but it's a theme that happens again and again and again. And of course, we go to locations where, of course, murders has happened. One of the most famous one. Are you familiar with Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We go to it's called the Mercer Williams house. We go to that home and we talk about Jim Williams. And of course, we always like to brag on him. A lot of people just know that side of Jim, but the other side of Jim is the reason Savannah is as beautiful as it is because Jim started a restoration process way back in 1969. He personally redid over 50 homes in Savannah and in Bluffton, South Carolina. And then after Midnight in Garden of Good and Evil came out, the book and the movie, that's when tourism took off in Savannah. So, you hear the other side of Jim and all these horrible things in the movie and whatnot. But that's the side of Jim I really like to let people know about, because in Savannah, us as Savannians owe him a great deal. Who knows if we'd be running a ghost tour and have the guests come in if it weren't for the things he did, so we are grateful to him. But that is one of the stops we go to. There's the old Candler Hospital. There's the Candler Oak Tree, better known as or live oak, I should say, better known as the Hanging Tree. We go to the Espy House, which one of the little girls I mentioned is there. Little Katie's there. We go to the Demon House, which is 432 Abercorn, which is well known. And then again, another burial ground right there where those homes are is Taylor Square. It's recently renamed from Calhoun Square for good reason, but it was renamed to Taylor Square. And that's actually a Civil War time African-American cemetery that they built right on top of. So we're actually in a cemetery right there. And you'll see that again, that's the theme in Savannah over and over and over. On our Wright Square tour, like I said, we start at Wright Square. Then we go to the Gordon House, which that's where Juliet Gordon Lowe lived, the founder of Girl Scouts. But there's a lovely, her parents, there's a lovely romantic love story about them that is paranormal. It's a beautiful story. Then we go Colonial Park Cemetery, which was the second cemetery in Savannah. Of course, there's a lot of things there. We go to 1790, which is a very well-known haunted location. We go to the Owen Thomas House and Slave Quarters, where we get a lot of good activity.
And that house was one of the largest homes built at its time, which was 1819, as well as the first house with plumbing in the South. For me, Georgia or Savannah, it's always had activity, and the Southern people take a lot of pride in keeping their history going. So it's kind of, how do I explain it? For me, it's kind of like the Day of the Dead for the Latin community. We make a veranda or an altar, and we put our pictures up there in remembrance of our loved ones, and we keep that spirit going on. We tell our kids about them, generational. So these stories are generational. The city's generational. So, it was designed by Oglethorpe in 1733, and it's had numerous accounts of battles around it in Savannah. You think about the cotton coming through Savannah. Savannah was supposed to be the original capital of Georgia at one point in time. It's so much history there and everybody keeps on talking about it. So it's still lively in the past century. They still talk about it. Yes, they're in current society, in current life, but they're still talking about all the ancestors that came through here. But that's another reason why it's so active. It never stops.
But Savannah, again, first, you're never far from a corpse. Yeah. And outside of that, it's rare to find a home or a business in a historic district that somebody doesn't have a ghost story about. It's just that, and that's why Savannah is known as one of the most haunted cities in America. They alternate 1, 2, and 3. It's usually between Savannah, St. Augustine, and New Orleans. Yeah. So we're always in the top 3, if not number 1, depending on who's doing the ranking, right?
Right, and that which brings me to the next question: is as business owners, when you go to, I guess, the courthouse, the Chamber of Commerce, and you're going to go ahead and register your business, and they're going to ask you what it is that you do, I would assume they're not really surprised that you're both doing this, because I'm guessing that it's pretty well accepted in that city.
Yeah, it's not taboo. Yes. It's nothing that anybody's embarrassed of saying or anything like that. Now it's out in the open and rather supportive.
Yes, in fact, well, we had to become licensed through the city of Savannah in order to do the tour. You know, you just can't go out there and just start doing a tour. You have to go through some proper channels. You know, we had to get a business license and get the license from Savannah and all that, insurance and all that fun stuff. You know, the people that you see doing tours, well, we have a badge that we wear. And so if you see people wearing those badges, then you know that the city of Savannah has authorized us to do the tour that we're doing.
No, and I guess that's great to have that, because if you're out there performing a tour and if you don't have that badge, I suppose you get a pretty good hefty fee or some sort of trouble with law enforcement or something.
Yeah,
yes.
You can get fined.
Yes, there are hefty fines if they catch people out there without that.
And just seriously, it's unsafe because, I mean, Savannah is not level. There's nothing in Savannah's level. It's a very big trip hazard. There's tons of traffic, tons of buses, because SCAD, their buses run late at night too. And I mean, there's areas where you could walk and drink. You know, it is a drinking town, and you need to carry that insurance. God forbid something happens. You know, we have trees and palm trees, and they die and fall off, and we have branches. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen. It's just irresponsible to be out there and not have your license and not be insured. It's completely irresponsible, and it's really not worth the chance of risking. You know,
she brings up the palm tree branch falling. That literally happened last Sunday. We with a private tour with some ladies, and
they were amazing.
Yes, they were. But we were standing in front of the Mercer Williams house, as a matter of fact, and I heard something cracking, and I didn't know sure what was going on, so I told everybody to look out. And the limb actually fell right behind one of the ladies that was on the tour. It touched her shoe, but it missed her by that much. It just barely touched her shoe. Yeah. So these things can happen. I mean, we know it can for a fact. And so when you see people out there who's not doing things properly, who's not authorized by the city of Savannah, because city of Savannah requires you to have the insurance, they require you to have the business license. You know, these are things that you have to have to be able to do these tours. And so it's for everyone's safety.
I mean, there's enough for everybody. I mean, for everybody to have their own style and to get licensed and get insured and go to the proper channels and have a business that's ran properly.
Now we're saying it's easy. It was not easy, but it's worthwhile.
Yes.
No, nothing's easy, especially a business, a podcast, or if you're doing anything in between. Exactly. It takes a lot of hard work, and your reputation is always on the line.
Yes.
So during these tours, because I'm thinking I was going to answer this question, but I pretty much I know the answer I'm going to get with these tours and these investigations. And you, prior to doing these tours, you were probably doing your own research and investigations already. And the success rate of guaranteeing anything happening is next to zero, because you can be somewhere for hours and hours and days, nothing happens. And it just takes that one time you catch something. During these tours, can you recall one of the more memorable things that happened with your guests that maybe freaked them out? Have they ever say, I can't continue? Is there anything like that?
Well, we did have just last night, we were on a tour with some wonderful guests, but we were at the Old Candler Hospital, and I'd set up cat balls and all the stuff, but this one cat ball just kept going off. I had checked it and everything, but it just continually went off, and we rarely have those go off, so I was kind of impressed. The EMS were doing their things, and we started communicating with the rods, and they were just dead on. You know, you'd ask them to do something, they just automatically did it. And again, they're never in our hands, they're always in our guest hands. So, you know, we're not touching them at all. But there was a lady that after that point, she didn't want to use the rods anymore. I think it frightened her just a little bit. And so those things do happen on our tours. People get frightened. But when it gets to that point, I try to go out of my way to make sure they're having fun in other things that are happening at the moment. But we have had people get afraid. We've had people at the end of Ty does open up the session at the start and closes it down at the end of her tour, and then offers a blessing with some sage. And we've had people go on the tour, and they leave and say they don't want the blessing, and they leave, and then turn right around and come right back up. No, I changed my mind. I want to go ahead and do that. That's a good idea, because we'll joke with people, say, okay, you don't have to have the blessing, but you can get it now for free. But if we have to come to you, or you come back to us, that's $10,000 for the blessing then. But it's all a joke. We don't need it.
That's like the old 80s televangelist for the prayer cloth. 10,000. No, what? So,
yeah, right.
No, so
yes.
With that being said, and people having these extraordinary experiences during the beginning of the tour, I know that you're educating them on how these devices work. How do you prepare them to be, how do I ask this question? How do you prepare them for something you can't prepare for?
Yeah, so the way I do it is different than I say most people would probably do it. I actually open the session, and I open it with my faith, and I do it in a manner for the protection of the spirits on the other side, and as well as the protection of us on this side. So the way I choose to do it is I actually do it with the Christian God in mind, and I go through it and I ask our protectors, guides, and ancestors to come forward and help lift the veil for the spirits of Savannah. And the only spirits of Savannah that show up for me are the ones I've actually worked with before and have communicated with us before. There have been some new ones that pop through, but I have, just like I have boundaries for the living, I have boundaries for the spirits. And if they don't obey by those boundaries, they are removed. And I ask my guests before I even open up the session, whether they believe in the paranormal or not, whether they have faith or not. Just imagine the most purest white light surrounding yourself and surrounding each other. And that's how I do it. And really, I constantly let them know that they're in control. So if they're done communicating with that spirit, all they have to do is tell the spirit, no more, back off. And human spirits that we work with, as often as we work with the same ones, they get used to using the equipment and they can back off quicker. The newer ones, they're not quite used to the equipment. They're still learning some of the equipment, how to communicate with the equipment. So sometimes they take them a little bit longer to back off. But they listen and they're polite, and that's what I like to deal with.
Well, I think she spoke more on how we try to prepare them to interact with the spirits, but we do go through, it can be kind of humorous. At the beginning, I give them the rods, I show them how to work. I tell them we're going to ask the spirits to cross them, uncross them, point in various directions, and do certain things when we discuss with them. At first, and a lot of people will be all giggly and everything when we're doing that part. And then about halfway through the tour, if we're getting some good interaction, their giggling has turned into a very serious face. And they're really amazed at what's happening there in front of them. So with that being said, there's no real way to prepare them. Yeah. We can say, hey, this is what we're attempting to do. And I do want to say we attempt to do. We're very grateful that we've been blessed to have activity on our tours. But we cannot guarantee that. As you were saying, like investigations, we're also a part of an investigation team living with the paranormal. And we can go to a location, sit there for hours and not get a single thing, nothing at all. Then you can go to another location, maybe get a few things. And another location, and it's like, hey, this is really cool at this location here. But, so we never say that we can guarantee you're going to get an experience. But we can say so far, of all the hundreds of tours we've done, we've gotten some pretty interesting interaction in some locations. So these are the things, really, you kind of heard the whole spiel of how we started tours just by what we was talking about. So these are the kind of things we informed our guests of, to kind of say, this is what we're shooting for, but to actually prepare them for when we get really good interaction. There's no way to really prepare somebody who's not a part of the paranormal world to understand exactly what we're getting at until it's actually happening to them. And most of our guests actually, they respond very well to the activity.
Yeah. And I don't know, I mean, I feel very honored and blessed that we have gotten activity pretty much, every time.
But some nights better than others. Some nights, I mean, it's really, really awesome. Some nights is some minor activity, but still activity.
And I have to remind that my guests, as well as myself, that these are humans. They're human spirits, and human spirits are going to do what they're going to do, just like we're going to do what we're going to do. Sometimes our energies don't mesh with other people's energies, and sometimes it's sometimes they're just not liking the person that we brought on the tour, or the person that came on the tour might have been a little brash with them. And that's the other thing too. I have to constantly remind myself and our guests, you're dealing with Southern spirits. So yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, thank you, sir.
Please, thank you.
It is the best way to go, because if you just talk like cross my rods, I'm not going to do that. And thank you after that they did answer your questions. They did cross your rods. Politeness to do is thank you. Thank you for allowing me on your property and talking to me. So, I mean, that's just how I think and see things. But, I mean, we have been honored and really blessed. And I think part of it, too, is because we do this so often and we communicate with our spirits, and the way I open it up and the way our guests communicate with the spirits like us, and they have a relationship with us now, because we've come across new spirits and we're still building those relationships with those new spirits. They're still a little like a new dog. They come up, but then they back off a bit. They come up. So we're constantly building those relationships. And
it's actually learning the spirits that we're communicating with too. We've learned at Taylor Square that we are communicating with some African-American Civil War time individuals who are buried there. And we found that if I try to communicate with them, they won't communicate. And it's because I'm a white male who talks like I talk, and I cannot blame them at all for not wanting to interact with me, knowing the past and knowing the situation. So I don't hold that I understand completely. I let Todd just take over and do all the speaking there. And it's just learning little idiosyncrasies like that with the spirits, because they're just humans in another form. Is what we're dealing with here. And so, the same way that we're nice and polite to each other, we need to be the same way to these spirits, because they're just humans in a different form.
Just like we have some soldiers that won't communicate with me because I'm a female and I'm asking to do something. They're like, "Who are you?" So, but they'll work with Mike. I mean, it's who the spirit's like, and vice versa. I mean, but I love it. And, we've had interesting things happen just recently, last couple of weeks. Well, just last week at Chandler Hospital, Old Chandler Hospital, I apologize. We've met a new spirit that actually our guests, which we've tried to do and it's come out, we've done it, where I'll ask him where he's standing at, because it seems to be a male spirit. This time it was a female spirit, and I'll walk at the steps and I'll tell them, let the guests know by crossing the rods, and they'll let the guests know when they cross the rods. My back is turned away. I have nothing. I'm walking up this, and they'll make an X out of the rod.
On that, we talk about interesting interactions. The point of that, like last night, we had 3 guests all holding rods, going straight out. Ty started walking up the steps, and when she reached a certain step, all 3 of them crossed. So, it's just really neat that, if one crosses, okay, maybe somebody moved. 2 crosses, oh, maybe it's this. But if all 3 guests are all experiencing the same thing at the same time, it makes it a little more convincing that something's happening here beyond the ordinary.
And then we have the guests, they have the rods, and like Mike says, they're laughing and enjoying themselves. But then they'll start really like paying attention, because everybody's getting activity, and they're like trying to stay as still as they can. And the rods will cross, or they'll say, I felt that. I felt that. It feels like somebody's moving them, or I get tingles in my hand, or I feel like somebody's touching me. And that's the stuff that we like to hear.
Wow. So they're feeling that energy coming through them. Mm-hmm. And it's talking about the spirits, whether they want to communicate with you or not. being that the history of Savannah it is the way it is, built on top of bodies of different decades and centuries. During these tours, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I had the question came to mind to where when you go into these, almost sometimes you go to the same locations, perhaps new locations. Are there certain spirits, and I'm gonna give one a random name, Bob or Jeff, where they keep making appearances over and over again?
Absolutely. Like at the Mercer Williams house, we're convinced we're talking to Jim Williams there. But what we'll do is we'll ask the guests, we're standing at the fence, we'll ask them to put their EMF meters on the other side of the fence, and they're sitting on green. And then when I start talking about Jim, especially when I start talking well about Jim, they'll start pegging out to red when I start talking well about Jim. And if you know anything about EMF meters, yeah, they can be interfered with various things, but it's very rare for them to sit on green and then start pegging red. Kind of now, well, I'll say in my mind, it's kind of on command because I know I'll start saying certain things about Jim. And when I do, they'll start going to red. And that's him letting us know that he's there with us. And then, of course, we'll use the rods and whatnot after that. But yes, we do. And we do have two child spirits. One of them that only our company is privy to. It's a young girl that Ty picked up on at Colonial Park Cemetery. And she'll come out and she'll talk to our guests and visit with us every time we go there. And at the SB house, well-known, there's another little girl there, along with her father, who will come out and communicate with us. And we also are privy to another thing. Some people know of it, but they don't know of the gentleman that we speak with, really, that he's spoken to. But at the Owen Thomas house, there's a gentleman there that'll come out. And I can usually count on him to make some very good interactions with the rods. I mean, he's usually dead on. We love visiting with him. And then there's Bradley's locksmith. There's a gentleman there that interacts with the not only the EMS very well, but also the rods very well. And so these are recurring people that we go visit every time we have a tour. And we talk to them like they're old friends at this point now because we've talked to them so much.
And they recognize, for me, they show me that they recognize us. Yeah. I mean, they'll either greet us right away, excited, or if we haven't been there for a while, I get a little bit oh, okay, I'll mosey on if I want. And we did have something happen at the Mercer Williams house with Jim's home. I had in the middle, we were getting action and everything, and I had accidentally made a comment about Jim that he did not like. And I mean, everybody, the EMFs were going off, people were having using the rods because they don't need me to do it. But once I said that, everything stopped. Everything went back to green. Rods were not moving anymore. And I was like, he was done. I offended him. So even the next time I came up, the next guest, he still wouldn't talk to me. If I talked and I spoke, everything would shut off. I would have to walk away from the guest, apologize, and then Mike would have to do it. And it wasn't doing us great. He was annoyed with me. So I had to bring him an offering. And finally, I asked him if he finally really forgave me, and he said yes. But sometimes I do that. Sometimes I say the wrong thing, and I'll disappear for a while. Like, yeah, my parents.
And to let you know what she said, the story of Midnight Garden Gneevil, Jim Williams, got into a gun battle with Danny Hansford. He claims Danny shot at him. He shot back and killed him in self-defense and killed Danny. Well, there's a lot of other gentlemen in Savannah who was very upset when Jim killed Danny because they were waiting their turn with Danny. So if you know the story, you know what I mean by that. And she brought that up while we were there. And that's when Jim just didn't want no part of us any longer at the moment. And it took a couple of weeks to get it back to where it was before.
Now he talks to me again.
Yeah, we don't bring that up any longer. That's for sure.
No.
That's the first and only time.
No, and during the times, are you recording any of this evidence? Are you videotape or audio?
Yes. Actually, I've started putting some up. I need to edit some more and put it up. If you go to our Facebook page, really all our social media, but really our Facebook page, if you go there, I've been posting things, the interaction with the rods and various things that we have there. At first, I really wasn't putting a lot of that up, but I'm finding that, people really enjoy it. And again, we don't mind sharing that because, of course, the activity is different every night. So we can share this kind of stuff, and then, hopefully it'll let people see a little bit of what's going on and what we're doing. So yes, you can go to our Facebook page. I got a few things up there now along those lines.
And and then we have the guests that like I said, I'm flattered that they've had experience. They have brought their loved ones with them and have asked me, can I speak to my loved one, or is that taboo, or is I not going to answer? And I always tell them the way I open it is I say with our guides, protectors, and ancestors. Your loved one is either can be your guide, can be your protector, and can be your ancestor. But you can also carry them with you all the time. I mean, it's not for me to say. And when they ask their loved ones if they're there and to come forward, that I'm honored. And I always tell them that is not me. That is not Mike. That is 100% you.
Yeah. The spirits they brought with them had, we don't claim to be these psychics where we go out and can communicate. You tell us the name of your loved one, we'll talk to him. For us, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. It just doesn't work that way. But what we found is people who come on our tours, and we're opening the session, let's give them tools to be able to communicate with the other side. That if they ask on their own, we've had quite a few times now that very, very moving experiences where people ask if a loved one's present and they're able to interact with them. But like Ty said, we're real fast to let people know it has nothing to do with us. It just so happens you're with us, and we gave you tools to be able to talk to the other side.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm honored when that happens, and I feel so blessed that, they got to experience that for themselves, because a lot of times people need or desire, they don't really need, but they desire to actually see when they speak to them, their loved ones that have passed or whatever, an actual something happening. So it's a blessing. It's a blessing all the way around. And, I just feel honored when that happens. That's one of my special memories that I tend to carry with me as a huge, huge blessing. And really, any of our new spirits that have trusted us enough to communicate with us, or that are not on everybody's radar, that's an honor too. That is definitely an honor that they come around. And that because with children's spirits, I always find out there's an adult with them. There's always an adult spirit with a true child spirit, whether it be a parent, a grandparent. And they're the one, because they're just like humans. They're curious, as they were when they were children. And those adults will give them permission. Yes, you can talk to them. No, you can't talk to them. So I'm honored about that. I'm honored when my guests get interaction. I'm honored by that. It's not me. It's never been me. They're drawn to me, and I help build that light for everybody else. But it's not me. It ain't Mike. We're just there to help support it, help support their experience. That's what it's not we don't have anything in our pockets, beeping, making stuff move. This is all their experience. I'm just there to help brighten the light and to show them how to do it in a respectful and safe manner. That's it. That's all.
And you could say that perhaps the spirits know this, that you're doing it the right way, because you're not doing some parlor trick. You're not trying to dupe people out of their money. You're doing it for the right reasons, to honor these spirits and, teach people the history of Savannah, Georgia. And I know I will probably be in Georgia sometime next year. Okay. You two will be the first on my speed dial. I'll be booking that tour.
Absolutely.
And for the listeners of Let's Find Out that happen to be around that area or want to travel anywhere in the United States, how can they book the tour, and how can they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Well, we're Spirit Xperience LLC. I have to add that for legal purposes, the LLC behind it. But we are Gen Xsters, so of course we spell experience with just an X. There's no E in front of it. So it's Spirit Xperience, no E, just the X, LLC. If you type that into Google, it'll pull you up to our Facebook. We're on all the social media, X, Instagram, name it, TikTok. We're on all of the different social medias. Our website is www.spiritexperience, again, no E, just X, experience.com. You can go there and see our website, and you can book through there. But really, you can find us. I've tried to get our name out, so I'm trying to get us everywhere. So if it's a social media site, look for us. We're probably on there.
Not just that, Diego. I do also want to mention if stuff is going on in people's personal life, home, if they're having some paranormal activity, reach out to us.
In the Savannah area, of course, we can't exactly travel, but if you're in this area, we do, we mentioned our paranormal team. We do also private investigations for people in their homes. We do businesses. Well, for businesses also. Now the businesses, depending on the situation, we'll let that be known to the public and put it up on, like, we're on YouTube, on our YouTube page or what have you. But the private investigation is always private. We do not disclose any information about private investigations. And so we do go in, and mostly our private investigations isn't so much of, hey, let's find out what this is. The people in those situations, they have a spirit that they do not want in their home. And we go in and help them try to remove this spirit, is what we go for in the private investigation. So anybody finds themselves in that situation, please reach out to us. In fact, free of charge. Those are free of charge. We never charge for that. Our phone number is 912-482-0406, that you can get in touch with us there, or through any of our social medias. Or the website, you can contact us through there. But we are available to help those who are having issues with the paranormal.
Well, that's pretty awesome. And also for the listeners of Let's Find Out, you can contact me, and I'll put you in touch with them as well. And let's find a solution to your issues. And before we go, I have a quick question of a non-paranormal kind.
Sure.
When I go down to Georgia and I book myself a tour, you're going to show me a lot of great things, a lot of great sights. I love food, especially Southern food. What places are down there that I can go to and just pretty much make a whole vacation out of it?
For Southern food, I highly recommend Mrs. Wilt's Dining Room. But it's Mrs. Wilt's Dining Room. It is fabulous. It's actually family buffet style. You actually sit at a large round table with lots of other people, so you'll make some friends while you're there. And it's actually, they put all the food in the center and you pass it around and everybody gets what they want. But for good Southern food, that's what I recommend. Now, if you really, really love Southern food, you might want to go out of Savannah a little bit and just find you any little IGA, which is like a little grocery stores here that sells lunches, and go in there and see about getting a lunch from there. That's where you're going to find some true Southern food, is in places like that. There are places, I'm not going to talk bad about anybody, but there are very popular Southern food places in Savannah that I do not recommend. There's a very popular one that I just would not recommend it. So I'm not going to say their name. I have to live here. But if you're in Savannah, I recommend Mrs. Wilt's Dining Room.
But Savannah has some delicious cuisine all the way.
Yes, all the way around.
Really does.
Yes.
And you said, music to my ears, you said buffet and Southern, so I'm already going to be there, my friend.
Yeah.
Well, now they only serve at lunch, and you have to go stand in line, so you got to get there early because it does fill up pretty swiftly.
Well, I'm an early bird. That's okay.
Yeah, you got to picture it more like an after church thing where everybody knows each other or doesn't really know each other, but your family. That's how you sit down. There's all food, and you pass it around. And
it is on Jones Street, which is one of the most beautiful streets in Savannah. So even while you're waiting in line, you got beautiful scenery.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to talk to wife and make some plans. And if you don't mind, because I know you do the tours, you do your own investigating, would you come back next year and share some of these stories and some of the evidence that you've caught during this experience, and come back on the show and share them with us?
We would be honored to. Thank you for offering. Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for being on the show, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank
you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Diego. Thank you.
Thank you, my friends. This has been another excellent episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Please check us out on all our social media pages, as well as on YouTube and Rumble. Like, share, and subscribe. Also, Let's Find Out is on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Catch the show on Saturdays at 2 a.m. For more information, please visit KGRADB.com. That's KGRADB.com. Together, we will get one step closer to finding out. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Until next time, my friends.